this little zine that you made.
Hey.
And I just love that people are making little zines again. It seems like I'm seeing them a lot lately.
Yeah.
It's really fun. I was reading back through it again, and have you ever done anything with Jules Buck Jones and that crew that does the Animal Facts Club?
No, but I love that. I love
Yeah,
their
it,
calendar.
it's definitely right in that category.
Yeah. He's someone I follow on Instagram who we've never actually like met in real life. I would love to be a part of that because of my job and how much time I spend outside, like the natural world and science are, I mean, just endless inspiration.
Eels have been turning up a lot in your work.
Uh-huh.
Just fun. I could read some facts out of your zine.
Sure.
Like this one is extremely fascinating. Eels are gender neutral until late in life when they shed their stomachs and grow genitals.
Yeah, so I kind of shortened that, but those things don't happen at the same time, but they happen later in life. And it's just one of the many fascinating things about eels, but they have this 5,000 mile plus journey to and from the Sargasso Sea to wherever they end up hanging out for most of their life. And they don't eat the entire way back. They become a male or a female. And so all of their energy is starting to go towards like having reproductive energy. And then something to do with the moon and the tides and weather formations triggers this instinct to return to the Sargasso Sea. And they do shed their stomachs. And they don't eat the entire journey home. They're just like one track mind must return to the Bermuda Triangle, spawn and die. I started getting into them because I saw that there was, I just like looked on the, um, it's funny, like you pass things like so many times in your life, and then sometimes you don't ever stop and read them or look at them. They become like furniture or like a lamppost.
Yeah.
And so, daily swimmer at Barton Springs, and after like 3 years or something of doing that every day, I look over and like actually look at like what are the animals in here? What are they called? And they had an American eel
Hmm.
listed as one of the animals there, and that's what kind of triggered my obsession. Because then I started looking for it and talking to people about it, and then read books about the American eel.
There's just one eel in the pool, or there.
Not anymore. I mean, I want to keep the mystery alive.
Okay.
Because I did, title the zine, Have You Seen Her? And I made a t-shirt for SOS that's like, Have you seen her? Um, but I don't believe there's been an eel in the springs for a couple of years.
Mm.
And there actually used to be two. There was like a big, probably a female,
Hmm.
and then a smaller one. And I have multiple accounts from trusted sources that they would like see them at the same time. So they weren't it wasn't the same one mistaken. Um, but I did see an eel in real life one time in Spring Lake in San Marcos, and that was kind of life-changing too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have a funny story about eels that I mean, I hope it's funny. It was funny to me when it happened. I was in Tulsa with my sister and my niece, and there's an aquarium there that we went to, and there's like a big pool that has glass that kind of comes up like chest high, and you just walk around it, and there's like a fake reef in there, so they've got all kinds of reef fish,
Yeah.
and there was like a group of eels, and we were like just happened to be standing right in that spot, and this family came through, and the kid was like ran over the glass and like pressed their face up against it and was looking at the eels and like, mom, look at that. And the mom was just like, ew, and that's why we don't swim in the ocean. Just the way that it was said, and then the sentiment of that you wouldn't swim in the ocean because of things like that. Whereas we all felt like that is exactly the reason why you swim in the ocean.
Yeah. You wouldn't imagine that people like a lot of people have a repulsion toward
Yeah,
eels. Like people that really love the water and love nature, they're like eels. Ooh,
yeah,
ooh, ooh, ooh. I think it's similar to why snakes make us uncomfortable.
yeah,
It's a sort of primal mystery that it tickles, and people like don't know how to look at it. That's exactly why I was drawn to it.
yeah,
And um, you know, I the more I looked at it, the more I was like, these are the coolest creatures. And I had a fear of snakes for a long time, and I still it still comes up sometimes. But now I kind of feel like it's a deep respect and a fascination more than a fear.
yeah,
And so I think eels helped me bridge my fear of snakes into that new realm. The show was called Epiphany, which the title came way after all the work was made. It was curated by Alyssa Taylor Wynn, who is on the board of Collab, and she had never curated a show at Collab up to that point. And she sought out myself, Michelle Marchessault, Diana Welch, and Mimi Bowman to be in this group show, but we all had a lot of freedom. The concept was subverting comfort, and Alyssa sent us some inspiration and some things that had sort of influenced her wanting to make this the overarching theme of the show. And then we were just given a lot of freedom. And the only rule was that we weren't to collaborate with each other because she really wanted each of our work to shine through. And I had only shown at ICOSA really in Austin. I'd shown at other galleries outside of Austin, but she just wanted to help us get exposed to more people in Austin and for them to really see our work and our styles. And at the time, I had recently learned ferrocement from James Talbot. So I knew that I was going to be making some cement things and I wanted to do a water feature of some kind. And so from our very first meeting, I was like, I think I'm going to make a fountain. And I didn't quite like believe myself. But once I said it out loud, I was like, okay, I really got to do this. And so I started researching and yeah, working with Talbot actually to help him set up a class at his property in exchange for his guidance, because I had only made one other piece up until that point.
hmm
Um, and he's a funny mentor. He has such a soft side and such a wild imagination, but he like picks a scapegoat for each class. He's like, Kate, where'd you put my trowel? Where'd you,
yeah,
someone's always like hiding everything from him. Which is it's just funny hijinks to work in his space and yeah. So, I mean, the fountain, and then one of the other things was I had free reign of creating a mural on the side of Collab with chalk paint, chalk spray paint. So that was another completely new medium for me. I'd never done um, anything with spray paint, really. I had done a mural on a pool, and that was the only other really large scale thing I had done up until that point. And so it was exciting. We had like a year to make the work, but of course the way that these things go, like you don't spend all year because, job, kid, life.
yeah,
Um, but the work was definitely influenced by the stages of grief that I was experiencing. My mom passed in um November of 2023 and this show was in October of 2024. And so, really that whole year was
yeah. There was
figuring
other
that out.
other stuff.
Yeah, other stuff, but also using the process to work through the grief and
Hmm.
things that were going on. It wasn't a conscious decision, it just was part of it for
Yeah.
sure. And something I've, you know, acknowledged about my work always is that it's really, it comes with a lot of personal mythology that sort of, it's my way of metabolizing the world and experiences that I have,
Yeah.
which I don't think I'm unique to that. I think that a lot of artists are doing that, but I have my specific symbols and archetypes and exploring like the inner landscapes through these dramas that I
Uh-huh.
create. And then, you know, being placed alongside Diana and Michelle was really awesome too. Mimi, I didn't know her work as much, and she kind of came in at the end. But both Diana and Michelle, I just thought they were such incredible artists, and we're all so different. I was like excited and had all this anticipation for like, what's it gonna be like for our work to all be seen side by side? And I think it came together like it was totally on purpose. Like we all knew what each other were doing, and it made sense. And that was just a beautiful coincidence, I think.
I think it was credit to Alyssa though too for that because that's part of like the sense that she had to pull that particular group of people together.
Yeah, yeah, you're right. She knew us and she knew our work and how it would play together. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And then also I think, um I know that you have mentioned like animism, and I know that Alyssa has some views on that and like energy and how that all plays, and I absolutely have views on that too. I mean, I feel like probably just you're all sort of you're working separately, but there's still sort of like a connection between you all that is unspoken and unseen,
Yes.
you know, that
Yeah.
came through. So, it was a great show. It was an
Thanks.
amazing show. Um,
It feels like it was so long ago,
it
but
does, I mean, yeah,
I
a
guess,
lot's happened in the world since then. It's like
yeah.
7 lifetimes ago at least.
Yeah. I wanted to say one other thing just about Alyssa and then Sean who runs Collab. Like Um, I've worked with a lot of other curators and gallery owners, and um, it was nothing like that. There was zero pretense, and also both Sean and Alyssa were, so helpful. Sean, um, especially with like just helping me, get
Mm.
scaffolding to do the mural and yeah, just like really, really available and really supportive. Um, which the other galleries that I've worked with, sometimes they're just a little hands off and
Yeah.
like not as involved. So I appreciated that, especially because I knew I wasn't going to actually like make money on any of my pieces,
Mhm.
and it was all just sort of out of like passion and desire to like show these new pieces and explore new media. Yeah.
The whole thing felt very experimental, and that space I think really allows for that because it's a
Hmm.
very non-traditional space. It's not the four gallery walls, white walls.
Yeah. I love that about collab. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So I went to the opening and then I went not to the closing reception, but there was something else that I went for. Oh, it was the artist talk
Oh,
that I
yeah.
went to that was kind of like several weeks later. And I noticed that you had been making some changes to some of like to the fountain and the other sculpture that you had where you were adding little shells and rocks and things like that, creating like little patterns. And what what was that? What was behind that for you? Like, what did you get out of that process of sort of like the um keeping it open like throughout the course of the show rather than like, okay, I finished, it's done, walk away.
Yeah. Well, it's I struggle with knowing when things are done, and if I have access to my own work, it will continue to evolve.
Hmm.
And so the fact that well, first of all, the mural, if I hadn't run out of spray paint, I would have kept going and
Hmm.
covering things. But yeah, I ran out of it, so it was like, okay, I'm done. Um, So then I focused more on the fountain and the statue. And I noticed at the opening that people were sort of, just like walking up to the fountain and then just like walking away. And I had imagined people like sitting and like hanging out, having this more of this communal thing. So I started placing stones and kind of making it feel more like this thing emerged from this like crumbling foundation of something. It was out of hope that people would stick around there and kind of be more investigative. And then with the statue was really made in honor of my mom. And so I felt like she was there. And um because Sean gave me the gate code and I was going in and out to work on the mural for a couple of weeks, um, I was like, oh, I can go visit her anytime. And so I would really kind of set up an altar around her with little things and burn things and sing and draw and hang out um, when the gallery wasn't open. And then one time when it was. Um, but it was funny, Sean like installed security cameras like within the time frame that the show was up, and he was like, "Hey, what are you doing?" Um, so yeah, I felt like it was my second home, and yeah, I think that as an artist, it is kind of the biggest challenge. Like, when is something done? Um,
I think
that's
it but made them feel like they were living
mm,
pieces of art rather like it took it away from just like objectness into something interactive almost, you know.
you
Um,
might have been the only person that noticed.
maybe, I don't know.
I
Uh,
think it's cool that you went there more than once and
yeah,
saw
I
that.
mean, yeah, it was, I think that sometimes you have to do that to like soak things in properly, especially at an opening, because openings are not the best way to like actually view and interact with the artwork, you know. They're
Oh yeah.
social and loud and busy and crowded too. So you mentioned the pool when you were working on that and sharing images of it in progress. I was so excited because I've always wanted to paint a pool. And
Oh.
and I was so excited that you got to do it and it looks amazing. How did that project like come into existence?
It was a friend owned like an Airbnb house,
Mhm.
and she was just like, "Yeah, we gotta drain this pool and like repaint the surface because it's got some blemishes or something." And I was like, "Oh, well, what if I just painted it?" What if, and she loved my work, and she was like, sure, let's do it. And so but I had this really small window because they had like a wedding or something that was going to happen there. And so
Uh-huh.
it had to be like painted, sealed, filled again, out. I think it was like 3 days that I
Oh,
had.
wow. That was a
Yeah.
big project.
Yeah. And I had never done something like this. So it was like, figured it out real quick. And it was again like the space that was someone else's space that I just sort of made myself. I'm like, this is my home. This is my studio-ish for these next 72 hours. And there was this chicken that showed up and nobody even knew where it came from. But this
Uh-huh.
chicken was like harassing me and like messing with like I would see like little like chicken tracks like across the pool where it like walked through the wet paint and so the chicken like made it into the mural. I had to like and the same thing happened with the collab mural. I saw a coral snake. And it's like if you encounter well while you're making a mural, you better just put them in there.
I remember the coral snake actually very distinctly. So the pool, then have you gotten to really enjoy it, like swimming in it afterwards?
No.
No.
I got to swim in it once.
Oh, okay.
I think they ended up selling the property
Mm.
to a rehab facility. This house was amazing, and the pool was within a greenhouse. Yeah, it was kind of like a dream, and I didn't really plan ahead what I was gonna do, which was really fun for me.
Think that that's part of what I love about your work is that it feels so spontaneous. I mean, for me, the whole thing about art is getting to see how another person perceives the world and what comes through them. And usually artists are pretty cool people. And so it's cool stuff. And I feel like definitely there's a surreal quality to what you're doing. It feels very much like it's coming through you as
Mm.
much as from you. And like you said, there's certain things in there that you can, like, if you have looked at your work over a period of time, you can see that they recur and continue to pop up. And it's just like a very free quality.
Thank you. Sometimes when I'm making work for an extended period of time, when I have like some hours to just go, um, I leave my body a little bit. And I've heard this described by other artists, and I'm like, yeah, that's what's happening. It's sort of you become this like channel.
Yeah.
And it's not that my aesthetic inclinations aren't there because they are, but I feel like I'm expressing something that's even beyond me, or like I decided to like draw this thing that means this. On reflection, I kind of see how it felt to make it, but in the moment, I'm just going. And it's a form of play, I think, for me. And it's an antidote to all of the adulting that I have to do.
And I think that comes through and it gives you a sense of playfulness when you're the one viewing it.
Oh, good.
Do you feel like, so I feel like when, like I have sort of different bodies of work that I do, and they serve different functions for me. Um,
Mm,
and is one is more definitely like because I have a little bit of a sheepdog brain where I need to like organize things and like think about things and like it's very mental
mm,
and so it's like that work is extremely like planned and I do lots of studies, but then I have other stuff where it's much more kind of like what you're talking about or what you described where it's just sort of like you almost leave your body. And for me, that experience is like it's less about what comes through and more about the process of creating something that allows me to get into that space. Does that
mm.
make sense? Do you feel like it's like you described it as that like you're channeling and like these certain things come through, but do you think that also like the process of creating is what allows you to like to go there? Does that
Yes.
make sense?
It does. And first, I want to say that first sheepdog art that you're
Uh-huh.
talking about, where things are like you're like studying something,
Yeah.
either within yourself or in the world around you. I think that is, I have that practice also,
Hmm.
and it is a totally different side of my brain. I'm still using like these capabilities. I would say the eel zine is
Yeah.
a weird crossover because some of those paintings I made while in my more like meditative state. And then I was like, oh, these are baby eels. So they go into the zine. But there was never a zine, even, it wasn't even a twinkle in my eye when I was like making those paintings.
Yeah.
I so yes to both. And in the first one, like where I'm trying to figure something out or capture something that because sometimes I do have just an idea and I want to figure out how to express it and um kind of I bring the ritualization to that practice of like doing something very organized, so that it is still playful, but the other like sort of channeling art, I feel like is a totally different thing.
Hmm.
And I need like a 4 hour window,
Yeah.
because it doesn't come right away. It's not something like, oh, let me just bust out my sketchbook at the coffee shop. Like
Right.
I need a real window of time to access that.
And what about environment? I mean, you have a space obviously in your house that you use as a studio. Um, no?
I have a roving studio, so
Um,
it's been in my garage, it's been at my kitchen table, it's been on my back porch, it's been in my room. Recently, it's been my room. I like kind of created a little area, but I don't really like I am a creature of habit. Like I want to know that I have somewhere, but I don't want it to always be the same. I really crave this, like, I think it helps me feel spontaneous to have my studio moving depending on, and then when I was working on the cement stuff, I would start it at Talbot's and then I was finishing at my house.
yeah.
So, yeah, I like the idea of a studio being mobile and
Yeah.
transforming.
I hadn't really thought about the fact that like changing up where you work like feeds into that spontaneity and whatnot. I mean,
Mhm.
that's been a huge struggle for me for a long time. It was just not having a place to really work. I have this closet now. This is like a um
Looks very tidy.
huge step. Like I actually have my art supplies like accessible because for the longest time I that was the problem was that I could use my bed or whatever, but I didn't actually have a place for all the supplies and like the stuff I needed to make. And so
Mhm.
um and it's been, you know, like I kind of require like complete solitude, like more than 4 hours. Like I need a week, like
Mm.
3 days where I don't see anyone and get a bunch of stuff out before I can
Yeah,
like get in there. And then I'm good. But it's like, I mean, obviously, like I've had to learn to not be dependent on working that way and like work on the fly a little more. But there's not a lot of privacy or a lot of solitude. So uh,
yeah.
it's hard for me to get into the mental space sometimes, or the mental
I,
space isn't quite right. The like just the quiet to hear yourself, you know?
yeah. I think being a single parent kind of forced this there will never be time alone thing. Do you want to make art or not? Was like my um inner voice. And I started to view unfavorable circumstances as just part of the work.
Yeah.
And at certain points, because things would like, I would start on something and it would get like destroyed by like my rabbit who would just eat half of it or something.
Mhm.
So these uncontrollable or these circumstances, and just I feel like it I had to get really zen about it. And then I went through a phase where I really liked drawing with other people. Like
Hmm.
the solitude was just not even possible. So then it was like, oh, who wants to draw?
Yeah.
And um, I had a lot of fun forcing people that didn't really draw, forcing them to draw at like bars or parties. And I still really like doing that, just making people draw.
it seems like you've done a lot of collaborative stuff with people. Like actually, I don't know if you can really see what it is like behind me. It's
Trigger
the,
Town?
yeah,
Oh,
that
I
was a
love
while ago.
collaborations. Do you want to collaborate?
I
We
would
should,
love to collaborate.
we
I
should
mean,
make
we did have our little US mail
postcards.
thing and the postcards. I have your postcards right here that you sent me. Though that wasn't really a collaboration, but
Ooh,
I would love to. That would be fun.
it would be fun, especially
Um,
because we both do a lot of watercolor stuff.
yeah, let's
Yeah,
talk more about that for sure.
I
Um,
love collaborating, even if I don't like the end product. I just think that there's something so rich and personal that happens with a collaboration when both people show up all the way.
yeah,
And I've never been, well, I've done some musical collaborations, but I imagine, people that are in bands or have this magic with this sort of chemistry with the other players.
right.
That's what I think can happen with visual art in collaboration. Like it's it's just a matter of time, I think,
Hmm.
and people, you know, really deciding that they want to let go of their personal style somewhat and
Yeah.
like connect with another person. And I love when like because Matt and I for Trigger Town, was part of our process. We just got together and drew regularly, months. And we started drawing like each other. Like
Uh-huh.
I started drawing like him, he was drawing like me. We couldn't like tell who drew what. And I love when that happens because then
Yeah.
you're like, I'm not special. I've just like developed this language and
Yeah.
someone else can learn the language and then we can start really playing with like what else is there.
Did you
Um,
feel like that seeing him kind of adopt your style and technical like approach, did that help you see yourself and your own work more clearly? Like, did you see things that you hadn't noticed before?
huh. Well, yeah, because like I think at one point we had both drawn hands, and then he was like, "Well, your hands are way different than the hands that I'm drawing," and I was like, "Yeah, actually." It was when we got to like express things that had expression.
Hmm.
And that's when it started. There was like this banter in our drawing styles. So I guess I started seeing like everything, every animal. Like I was always like something had a butt or
Hmm.
like multiple eyes. Like there were just these signatures, and like hair was a certain way. And it's not that I just draw one type of hair, but yeah, when he would do it, then I would see it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know if I made any conclusions about it, but it was fun to watch.
Hmm.
And the same thing happened with me and Alyssa when we collaborated. We got together and drew because I was like, yeah, let's do this thing where we just get together and draw. And Alyssa didn't really draw much. I mean, she wasn't like her medium. And so it was really uncomfortable at first, but then she got into it. And then we started drawing like each other.
Yeah.
And you couldn't tell who drew what. And I like that it is just like a real loss of self. Like you stop being this like it's sort of like the expectation for you to like draw a certain way, similar to like the expectation for you to have a certain personality at a party or react a certain way to a
Right.
situation. Sort of like, yeah, it's so freeing.
I think anytime you can like disrupt your normal routine circle of people that you're interacting with, there's an opportunity to come out of it with a lot. So That was so both of those shows were at ICOSA when you were a member there. Let's talk about ICOSA since we're there
Sure.
and like how you got involved with that, when it was and what your experience was like.
Yeah, I want to say 2014 was when the idea was sort of rolling around, and Brooke Gassio was my good friend and neighbor, and she was like, My friend Jonas has been talking about like starting a collective." And I was like, oh, cool. That sounds fun. And so then it became like this bigger conversation and meeting up and putting the word out, and the process of it coming together was pretty organic, I would say. And like it was just who were the people that kept showing up to the meetup. And that sort of informed, okay, we're going to have 20 people. And this is what everyone, what does everyone want? Do we want to show work? Do we want to run a gallery? Do we want to collaborate? And so all of these pieces were the lattice work of the foundation. I sadly took on the role of being like admin person,
Mhm.
'cause that's just like what I do at jobs and in life as a Virgo. I'm like, okay, let's get organized and let's, what are our bylaws and officers and some structure? And then it totally exhausts me.
Yeah.
Like I'm like, we need this stuff. And then I'm like, why am I doing this stuff? But for like the first 2 years, it was great because everything was new and we
Hmm.
were figuring it out. And so we got the space really serendipitously, like Jukes Auto, and just the process of cleaning that out and with this small squad of artists was so invigorating and so rewarding to transform that space into a gallery. Man, it was pretty magic.
Yeah.
Uh, and I think like doing that type of physical work with other people was what really kind of galvanized the original core of people. Like some of them are still there. Yeah, and just like everyone was showing up and cleaning up, throwing kitty litter on oil spots because we
Hmm.
read that like that's how you soak it up. And like I don't know, it was a lot of work. Yeah, I was so shocked when we actually got it to this state. And I learned a lot about, what goes into running a gallery and how to maintain friendships with 19 other artists, even if, you don't necessarily think the same or have the same vision. And it was a lot of learning and a lot of growth. And moving the space was a pretty intense thing too. So I think I was with the group for 5 years, and it was a life-changing experience. I hadn't, as a parent, up until that point, I hadn't really figured out, other than like doing group shows and doing West and East, I
Hmm.
hadn't really figured out how to like show my work in Austin, let alone find time to make work. And ICOSA helped me reprioritize like, okay, I am still an artist. I love doing this. My studio can be my living room. I can make a piece that is 30 feet long and I could figure it out in my house. And so it really just it pushed me to like reprioritize making things again, making friends too that were artists. It was such a cool little era.
Yeah, and I think that the dedicated time that goes into running something like that, like that you're co-creating that with all of those people, like forms these very strong connections and relationships, like you said, regardless of whether or not you agree with people or not, you're still like working on this thing together. And
Mhm.
it's hard to like to develop those relationships otherwise, especially as an adult and everybody has their lives and to like form connections requires like repeated interactions, so that's just like automatically baked in. I mean, I was in an art collective in Denton in the 90s, and some of those relationships are like those connections are still like my people. I have other people since then, but those are the ones that those were like very formative years, and the amount of time that was like sunk into it and just shared experience. Like, um, Yeah, like you said, you have to have connections as an artist. I mean, like
Mhm.
doing it in a vacuum is, I don't know. Some people take that track, but it's hard. So,
It is really hard. It's funny, I go to shows there now and it feels like, oh, I graduated from here. Like I
uh-huh.
feel like alumni sensation
Yeah,
and not in a, yeah, it felt like a time and a place. And I'm glad it's still going. And I'm glad, when I left ICOSA, the reason I left was like, I was like, someone else can bring more to this than I can right now.
yeah,
Like, I need to step away and like, let the next generation come in here and shake things up again.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's
But
been fun,
yeah, I
like,
still love those people too.
yeah, it's been fun watching the evolution of it.
It's going on like 10 years.
Yeah, it's great. The canopy space was great, moving there. I know you said it was stressful, but it just like that little complex has a dedicated like audience and group of people like coming through there for other things in their own studios. And so I think having it all consolidated probably was pretty helpful for the group too, I would imagine.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
And it's kind of kept their programming centered in like the roving Austin spotlight.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think if I were going to be in some kind of like organized group again that was art related, I would really want to be in a smaller group of people that just did collaborations because
Hmm.
that's the thing that I really miss about the shows that I had there was like this intense like collaboration like is almost like a sibling relationship that would have to form to like see this thing out to the
Yeah.
end. I was featured in this book written by Craig Bunch, who was the librarian at the McNay for like 25 years. And it took a few years for it to come out, but it's out. And I felt so honored to be included. And it's like dreams, visions, and other worlds. And it's all Texas interviews with Texas artists.
Hmm.
And it took sort of being included in this book to even really acknowledge, but I I do have a strong influence from like visions and dreams, and it sort of collides with this checking out of my mind and just letting things go. But I think that's the part of it that kind of unifies, like that's the part that makes it not special, is like we all have this ability to like tap into this other dimension or whatever it is that's coming through. And yeah, I think I feel lucky that I can access it, but I
Hmm.
also wish that more people accessed it and saw the importance of kind of acknowledging things beyond this plane. And I don't know at what point in time, I mean, I sort of know, but at what point in time, like the woo-ness of the world became this just like untouchable and totally fallible subject. Like,
Hmm.
oh, you're so woo. And I'm like, that's a really weird line to draw in the
Yeah.
sand to delineate the world by that. Because so many times throughout history, science, what we thought was infallible scientific data or reasoning has been proven completely wrong and way off track. Um, and I think that, these are the inexplicable, mysterious things. Like someday they will have more hard research truth to them. But until then, they shouldn't be just completely dismissed.
Yeah, I feel like that just to detach it artistically, like from art for a minute. You were saying like that you wished more people would access that.
Mm.
Um, I feel like the way that I think about all of that is is actually more scientific because that's like what my background is and my like academic training is not in sciences, but I always loved the sciences and um
Mhm.
my mom like is real into that stuff and um so I that's how like the framing that I fall back onto is more of like a scientific thing and I have to couch that with like I'm not trying to say like somebody will hear it and they'll be like that's pseudoscience and like of course it's all conjecture because like no one has studied this stuff and I don't even know how you would design a study for this stuff but um if it's just energy like you know atoms particles beyond that it's just like quantum vibrating frequency energy it's not there's no separation in that and so like the experience I think that's what's going on right now where people like more people are talking about this stuff like whether you call it woo woo or whatever like even just in the past year I've noticed just like it's like on social media more and more people are just like outwardly speaking about it. I mean, in 2016, I was like super into this stuff, but I would not have gotten on YouTube and like publicly talked about it. Like, there's been a change in the conversation. And
Mhm.
I think that, like, I feel like part of that is that um, as more and more people are accessing that energy because it's connected is like like everywhere and everyone. And so even pe the people who aren't necessarily experiencing it directly yet, or they're not recognizing what they're experiencing as anything beyond like coincidence or something weird, you
Mm.
know, that they can't explain. It's like if the energy is doing this, that means it is affecting everyone. And honestly, I think that's why like the extreme of what's happening in the geopolitical world right now is so crazy is just because it's like everything is like getting amplified. And so
Mm.
that energy that already existed there had to like expand as well. But I think that bubble's gonna pop. Um,
Yeah. What about what happens to this idea when you zoom out in history and see that like even these acknowledgments of like our physical reality is not all that it is not all that's here like 100 years ago or 50 years ago like it feels like this is just another cycle of people being like oh because like
yeah.
think
And
about
there's people who will be like, well, every time there's like a major like world war or a big disaster, people turn to spirituality or religion or whatever, or woo-woo, like whatever. Like to me, that's just like a dismissive
yeah
narrative, you know, that like, because I feel like those things were going on before it just sort of like coincides for whatever reason. I think it's just cyclical, you know?
yeah
Um, and perhaps like each cycle is like a little more and a little more and a little more. Um,
Mhm.
but I mean, I
I
also like look at the astrology of stuff very deeply, like beyond just like what's your sun sign and whatever. Like I look at the transits and my chart and what's going on and um And those guys like are the people who like none of this stuff that's going on in the world is surprising when you put it in the context, in that context.
Mm.
Um, because of like these different cycles and energetics and whatnot. But
Yeah. When do they say it's all gonna flip? I feel like there's been this discussion about the like the pendulum and the
yeah,
but like we experience time in such a on this plane at least in such a like at such a tiny scale in
yeah,
comparison to the ages of, Aquarius. Say, we're just this tiny like blip.
yeah. And we're
Um,
just starting that. I mean, I don't think timing is tricky with all that.
mhm,
And I feel like I actually know enough about it these days where I can read other people's charts for them, and I have done that, but I wouldn't ever, I don't, I haven't studied it enough to like to where I feel comfortable saying like I'm an astrologer and blah blah blah, you know. But but like the thing that's going on right now is that all of these like as the all the planets have like passed through Aquarius or entered into Aquarius, and the main ones are like the outer planets that are very slow moving, and
mhm,
those are like they consider like in astrology there's the personal planets that are like Mars, and then all the ones that are between the sun and Mars. And then there's the outer planets that are collective energies. And so they impact all of us more than like on a personal level. So like all this like really big stuff is
mm,
like going on in tandem with the fact that these outer planets are shifting signs either into Aquarius, which is Pluto, just did that. And then really like right now, Neptune is at the very end of Pisces and it's about to go into Aries. And Aries is the beginning of a new cycle. And so the like, there's a lot like people will look back at history and like, well, what was happening the last time that these planets were in this specific location? And and then there's also the approach of like, well, we have no idea. Like, none of us have ever lived in a time like this when things were positioned the way they all are now. All we can say is that big changes are occurring, and we can look around and see that that's occurring. And, you know,
I mean, it's beyond our written history, but maybe the geology says something. Like,
right. That would be interesting to like map
yeah,
it to
I
like a
I think
geological
about that
time frame. I
too.
don't know if anyone's actually done that.
Yeah, I think about that too. Like, because of just my fascination with nature and and everything is feels, alive. I think about a rock or like, the layers within a rock, like all the experiences. Sometimes I feel like I'm experiencing all of my lifetimes at once.
Hmm.
Have these days or even just moments because time doesn't exist in those moments
Right.
and they feel like a huge expanse. And I think that's, sometimes that's what dreams are, that we really can't like, why did this show up? Why did this happen? Um, but I think that that's probably what it's like to be a rock. Like a rock exists in its in all of its self, like all of its iterations and evolutions to where it is. Um,
And it's not static. It's just that it's a time frame that's so huge that like we can't conceive of it.
yeah,
But like a little river rock that's all smooth didn't start out little or smooth, you know.
right.
It's like had this whole life cycle and lifespan of its own.
Hmm.
Um, I mean, yeah, deep time is another fascination for me, and geology definitely. I've always loved that. And I think that's like been a lot of my attraction to Big Bend is just that you can see it there. It's all exposed, and there's so many different, like it's volcanic and it's sedimentary, and there's like, you know, fossils and just like all like it's all there. Like whatever.
Shit went down there. Yeah,
Yeah.
you can
Yeah.
see it. Yeah, yeah.
Um,
The same is true for the hill country. I
yeah.
mean, it's not as visible because things weren't like jutted upwards, but
Yeah.
it's all in the geography, and we're
And
at
it's
the, like,
buried under trees and shrubbery and
well, you see it in the plant life because of
yeah,
how the soil and the rock and like it's a convergence of three
true.
ecosystems. But there was something I was, oh, deep time. Have you heard of deep listening? There's a woman, Pauline Oliveros, who was, one of the first people to make experimental music
Hmm.
around the same time as John Cage and some other people. Yeah, she came up with the concept of deep listening, and she would take people out into New Mexico for, a week or more, and they would make music after listening, for long extended periods of time, basically like a meditation on like both listening and
Hmm.
making sound. And she was a total pioneer. I think you'd be into some of her.
Yeah, I'll look that up.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, I feel like that when I'm doing my plein air stuff, like that's what I'm doing, you know.
Hmm.
To me, that is like 100% communing with the the earth and like the elements, you know? It's just like
Yeah.
feeling temperature of the air and like whether it's windy or whatever and like the hardness of the rock or what I'm looking at. It's like it's all about like about isn't the right word. It's just like it's all um a way for me to like connect. And that's part of like the, you know, when I'm saying the like early in the conversation, like there's some work that I do that I feel like helps get me into that space.
Hmm.
Like that's, I would say that that falls into that category. Like the act um, of look like close looking and then translating that. And my plein air stuff is like really gestural and loose, you know, but just transferring that through the physical motion helps me create that connection, you know?
Yeah. You're in observation mode, even though you're
Yeah.
putting it down on paper. It's sort of like, what do you call when you like eat a sandwich and it's all taken apart?
Uh, deconstructed?
Yeah, deconstructed. Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, that's what I was picturing when you were talking about like the hardness of the rock and the wind and it's like usually when we're just like walking along, we take all that in, but it's
Yeah.
just, oh, let me take a picture. It's
But you
just
don't focus on it. Yeah, and it's totally different than like
deconstruct.
if I'm
Yeah.
doing photography. Like photography I feel like takes me out of the
Mhm.
environment, but drawing it like I can in my mind picture like a drawing that I did in a certain place and I can start hearing the sounds and like even the smells and like it's like a time machine, you know? It's like a sense memory thing that happens.
Yeah.
It's very cool.
Yeah. It is super cool. I've been wanting to mess around with smells in a body of work at some point. I think it's a sense that evokes the strongest memories and the strongest emotion. I mean, really strong emotions too.
Yeah.
Um, and I think it's just underappreciated all
Yeah.
over the place, even though we're constantly observing. I mean, I have this like low key belief that has been somewhat scientifically proven and talked about recently that smell is like where attraction is, not just pheromones, but like, we have like an atmosphere of little microorganisms that are sensing others and based on like what they eat and drink and think about. And
Yeah.
I think when we smell, it's like informing the whole atmosphere of tiny bugs or whatever, tardigrades.
Yeah.
What is familiar? What nutrients am I lacking? Or, sometimes it's homeostasis and sometimes it's like drawn to the thing that is missing.
Hmm.
Um, I don't know if all of that made sense because I don't
It
talk
does.
that much. But yeah, like I think that when I was talking about, magnifying fiction, I think about really small organisms a lot, sort of playing out our drama, but maybe they're the ones in control.
Hmm.
Like maybe those little microorganisms are informing our decisions way more than we actually know or can perceive or acknowledge because science isn't there yet.
I think it is actually. I feel like I've seen stuff that
Okay.
talks about how your gut biome will completely alter
Yes.
your mental like and emotional capacity and
Yeah, there was something that was like, you want to know who your friends are? Uh, like get a sample of their poop or something. So yeah, I think the science is there.
and the
And
ones that say yes, you know, are your really dear friends, and the ones that
yeah.
are like no.
Yeah. They're just not there yet.
Right. Just not quite close enough to share.
Right. Right. Yeah, I think the science is there. It's like
Yeah.
priorities though.
Just to like go back to art, and I'll just like share a little bit about some of my work, and then, if you want to expand on that, feel free. But
Mhm.
um the stuff that I was describing earlier is like that it's very mental. It didn't start that way usually. Like for example, that whole series that I did, the piezoelectric nights with the mystery
Explosions and
lights and the
stars. Yeah.
animals and the night sky and stuff. That was all from seeing the mystery lights in it, I will say, an undisclosed location in far west Texas that was not Marfa. And that's all
Mm.
I'm going to say because I would like to protect that location. But the whole reason I was in that spot was completely because I just did this sort of like follow the rabbit sort of day where I was like, I'm just not going to have a plan. Like my plan that I had got blown apart. And so I just was like, well, I don't know what to do now. So I'm just going to sort of like follow the rabbit and see where I end up. And it was
Yeah.
just like these like all day long, these just like seemingly magical little beautiful little synchronicities and things. And then I just like ended up in just the exact right spot that I'd never been to, before, and like was treated to this show like from sundown to sunrise. Like I kept falling asleep, and like every time I'd wake up, like check to make sure they were still happening, and they were. And I
Wow.
watched it even like as the sun was starting to come up, and they still were just like popping off, and then they just disappeared because of the light pollution of the day. But um so for me that was like a totally magical experience. And
Mm.
then obviously like the science of whatever the hell those lights are like is highly debatable and we don't know. And that's what that whole series of paintings became for me, was just like explore like what are the different scientific possibilities of this, and then like balancing that with this other part of me that had this like very awe-inspiring experience. It was like I couldn't stop thinking about it. And so I had to like engage the other parts of my brain too. if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And I
No,
feel like,
I'm with you. The synapses are going off. The part about your day just unfolding in all of these magical, unexpected ways, I think that that is really how life should be and
mhm,
could be, and that part of the construct of the system that has created our culture of busyness and doing. And the biggest thing that it's robbed us of is that the spontaneity of a day just unfolding and seemingly random things leading you to the next and the next. Um, because I think that it's not that there's just like this universe that's like conspiring to like create magic for us. I think we actually are leaving ourselves clues
mhm.
and unknowingly doing that for things around us. And the same with, you know, vultures and dogs and bugs. And like, it's not like there's some master, like, puppeteer that's making it all happen, but that is like, if we were to exist in a natural state, that is like how the world wants to interact with
Yeah.
itself.
Yeah.
Um, And, you know, even as you were talking, I was picturing the really fun day we had in San Antonio where we like went to the botanical garden and I have this photo of them like going like this and there's like vultures like flying
Yes.
kind of.
I forgot about that. Oh my God.
And then we went to a
They
presa
dive bombed
house.
someone.
Well, we were at McNay and then we went to presa house and
Yeah.
something weird and amazing happened there. I mean, I like
And we
remember
went to that
going
Botanica.
in the Botanica, and
Yeah.
at the Botanica, I bought this little vial of liquid that was called the road opener. And I like didn't really know about that even. I just was like drawn to it and
Uh-huh.
did it. And I do think that like whatever ritual happened and pretty sure it like changed the course of my life in some way, whether it was me and with the intention or just ready for or like the actual ritual influencing things. But yeah, I think that I want more of that.
Yeah. Me too.
And in art, it can really be a way to access it.
Hmm.
Sure. And a reminder that like sometimes just sitting somewhere and observing. I feel like, that, like I said, right now is my moment of like observing. I'm not like doing a bunch of stuff,
Yeah.
but I feel like I'm marinating in all of I'm just letting it come to me.
I think that part is so, like, it's crucial. I don't think creativity can truly exist without that marinating stage, you know? And sometimes it's like you're doing other things while marinating. I mean, it's like things overlap, but yeah, I think it is. It's like there's a definitely a productivity sickness in our world that like you have to be producing and earning and like doing and it's making us all crazy and physically sick and detaching us from that stillness that allows us to like to do that deep listening.
Yeah, I do agree. And I think especially in this dark period that we're in, that the creativity in the periods between the creativity can be respite from all the
Yeah,
chaos. Otherwise, we're just reflections of the chaos. If we don't take rest, if we don't like actually like step away from the surveillance, because in the social media and reading the news, we become surveillance too
right.
of whatever is put in front of us, and I feel like we just sort of energize it more.
That's
So
another thing I have noticed about not being on Instagram, especially, is
um,
that I don't feel that pressure that or guilt, like really, because like since I hadn't been posting a lot of my own stuff since last June, um, like I would feel guilty about that, like, like I
Mm.
need to be like demonstrating that I'm like actively creating stuff, like, and I don't even know what that's about, like w that expectation. Um,
Yeah.
it just like removing that pressure has been very uh like it's just like a weight off.
Well, I can tell you as one of your followers, I was waiting for you to post again.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I
No, I'm
forgot.
joking.
I was like, what?
I'm like, I'm really bad at like taking sarcasm
Oh,
and also
yeah.
like giving it
Gotcha.
out. Like I sound so serious.
Yeah, I mean,
That
no,
pressure is self-inflicted.
I know. It's like I know that there was no one out there that was just like Lisa Rawlinson hasn't put anything new up in a whole week, and so she's not an artist anymore. Like
Right.
she's a goner. Like why even try? You know?
So irrelevant. God.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't really think that that was happening, but it's just still, it's like, and I think too, it comes from all of us and our various jobs that we've had where we have like certain deliverables and you got to do this and the checklist and blah, blah, blah. It's just like that all exists for artists too. Like you got to market yourself and you got to do this and, like
Yeah.
it's all changing right now. So I think all the rules are just the rules were constraining to begin with, but they're all totally,
Out the window.
morphing. So
Yeah.
who knows like what it's going to be like. And the whole thing about artists is that like there's a long history of artists sort of creating the scene, you know? I mean,
Mhm.
it sucks like what's going on with the Kennedy Center and like arts funding and this and that and all the other stuff too. The existing structure and infrastructure of the art world is going to be hit by this stuff.
Sure.
Not to mention people's personal financial situation shifting will impact it as well. But like at the same time, that's like an incubator for artists to get creative. And I think that
Yeah.
that's what we do, you know? So,
Yeah. And take some of the power back from the, infrastructure.
yeah,
Um,
which hasn't necessarily been serving artists.
yeah, like I have so many friends that they're like their goal is like to be represented by a gallery.
Yeah.
And the more that I like think about that, that's never been like a goal of mine.
I mean, I have a friend who is represented by a pretty big gallery in New York, and I won't say who they are since I don't have their permission to talk about them. And
Mm,
I'm going to share that they said it was a big crock of shit, basically, and that they have felt that it's just become like a factory for them to churn out the kind of art people want to buy, but
yep.
isn't necessarily the art that they want to be making. And so it's been very creatively stifling for them, although it has been paying the bills. So I don't know.
And I can see why that's why it's a goal for some artists, but if it yeah, if it like kills your actual creative impulse beyond just like churning out stuff
Yeah.
that's gonna hang somewhere, I don't really see the point. Like then you might as well like be designing things for Target, which, not Target, but one of my artistic goals a few years ago was I want to design, a textile set for
Hmm.
people's restrooms because I just was into this idea about like creating a design and it being like out there as a thing that people could purchase. Also not a goal of mine anymore, but like to me, that's the same thing as like, you just make a thing that lots of people can just like enjoy. And it is like kind of captures a moment in time aesthetic, but I don't really think that's what makes someone a great artist.
Right.
Like it's just a, you know, trend setting thing. And you could
Yeah.
say things, you can definitely like express things, but I don't know.
I mean, the
Like,
relationship between art and commerce has always been a tenuous, weird one.
yeah.
And
All
then
of
there's
my
plenty.
favorite artists have been like people like this. We're
Uh-huh.
like totally changing. Do you know Connie
I
Converse?
don't.
She like disappeared in the 70s, but she had been trying to make it as a musician in New York, and nobody like had even heard of this type of music. Nobody even had a category or a genre to put
Hmm.
her in. They were like, it's folk music, but all the folk music at the time was like traditional songs that had just been like passed down. She was writing songs and like performing at parties and like meticulously recording. It reminds me of Hilma F
Wow.
too. Like these people that know that they're doing something really important and they keep getting rejected by the institutions and they can't really like fit into the existing models and but those are the people that I'm
Yeah.
like obsessed with. Like they knew about a
And
thing before the rest of the world had caught up and they
yeah,
were doing a form of expression that was like didn't exist. I
yeah,
just love that. I love that. That's the kind of artist I want to be.
yeah. I mean, I think that's the kind of people who, in the end, have had longevity. I mean, there's nothing wrong with like having success within whatever the system is at the time, but historically,
Mm,
it's always been the people who are kind of working a little bit outside of that you remember. I went
yeah.
to this amazing show in Paris. I mean, we've all seen impressionist paintings or photos of impressionist paintings our whole lives, but they're out of context of like what was happening in the world at the same time that impressionism was like beginning to like seed itself into the world. And so the museum had like along the center, they had all of these like the academic painting of the time, which was all like throwback to like Renaissance stuff. You know, it was like this
Um,
nouveau sort of like super realistic. It looks like it was painted in the Renaissance, but it's not, and it's been even like a little more polished and whatnot, but it was like subject matter that had nothing to do with what was going on in the world at the time. And then along the edges of the museum, they had like the impressionist paintings. And then in like a special gallery, they had objects and things from just the daily world, like
well, to give
mannequins with
you
the
context.
dresses and the fashion, you know,
Yeah.
it was just like, because that was like a part of what they were doing was like getting out of this sort of like talking about Greek and Roman gods and painting just like the everyday vernacular, like what you would see on the street. And
Mm,
in this style that completely broke from anything that had ever been done and then also reflected like the science of the time. But when you saw it, like, and I remember like kind of learning that in art school, but it didn't sink in the way like that when I saw it presented in that way where it was all together and you like looked over here and you saw what was like the accepted art form and then what people were just like, oh my God, they can't do that, you know, like
yeah.
you got it. And it was a really powerful, very effective show. Um, but I think it's like that's just like a really good example of how at the time the art structures and academies and like organizations that were in place and what was
Totally
acceptable.
rejected it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like
Wait, so I have a question for you. So,
uh-huh.
what do you think is the art now that's being rejected that is going to
Mm.
change, that is actually, you know,
I don't know. It's so hard when you're in it. I mean, I
yeah,
feel like in a way, like what I said about just that things feel like they're really shifting right now. And I don't know what comes from that. And I don't know what that looks like, but I feel like what's going on is going to fracture things to a point that people just start becoming more experimental because they're going to have to be. And I don't know what that looks like. And that's kind of cool. It's
yeah.
exciting to not know. Um,
I think that because of the crackdown on everything, that people are going to be less obsessed with posting and sharing, and it is going to kind of, people are going to start to be more like withholding and secretive about the most important work that they're doing artistically,
mhm.
knowing that it is for a select few
Yeah,
that, you know, aren't going to like turn them in or something. Not even that
right.
the work will be overtly revolutionary, but that, yeah, we're going to be moving away from this like, look, I made this and I made this and I made this and I'm producing so much and I'm so, it's going to, the cadence is going to shift, and the desire for it to be like more precious and
Hmm.
secret, and like hopefully that doesn't come with a bunch of like elitist BS. Hopefully it comes to like, oh, actually these are my people that I'm caring for.
Yeah,
I extend that, when there's trust that's built.
yeah,
That's my like hope for the silver lining of all of the fake
yeah. I feel like
hatred. Yeah.
for sure, at least the experience of like having a more close interpersonal connection with the artwork, like viewing it in person
Mm,
rather than online. I mean,
yeah.
some art just doesn't translate to a little tiny square,
Yeah.
but it's amazing art. You have to stand in front of it.
Totally.
Um,
I think most art is that way,
yeah,
but
but I think a lot of art has been created with that delivery method in mind of
yeah.
like it needs in order for you to get the followers on Instagram, you've got to like it's got to like be a quick like almost have like a graphic appeal to it because it's got to be instantaneously readable.
Yeah, it went from like not seeing it in person to like websites. And then do you remember that point when like suddenly like a artist website was like obsolete? Like
Yeah,
people didn't even have the attention span to go to your website that
I
you had
know.
built. You just had to make your feed like your website.
Yeah.
I remember when people were like, "Oh, I don't need your website. What's your handle?"
Yeah.
Like,
I really resisted that.
oh,
I've maintained my website and I never
right.
treated my Instagram that way. And I think that's probably why it never like it always just sort of was it was at a place I was okay with it because I had connections. I made a lot of connections with other artists. And
Yeah,
that was what I wanted it for and enjoyed about it. But it never worked for me in a way where I felt like it um I got opportunities from it beyond those less like tangible connections with artists, which are more valuable in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
I just never, I think that's the Gen X part of me that's just like, no, like I couldn't make myself do it.
Right.